So continuing to the last session that we have covered about the services introduction, the types of databases that we have in the RAC environment, policy managed and administrator managed. Because we have already verified that the current setup is administrator managed database instance, we are going to now see how do we create services in administrator managed database instance and how do we manage them. So if you ask me how about policy managed databases and how do we create services on that, definitely we are going to do that, because before we check how do we create services on the policy managed database instance, we should also learn another activity of how do we convert an administrator managed database to policy managed and vice versa. And after learning that activity, we should be going forward to learn the further activities on the policy managed database environment, like your creating services, managing services, creating redo log groups, how does your policy managed database instance will take care of that, etc, etc. So that's the reason at the moment we are going to actually create a service considering that your environment is administrator managed database, and it is so. And to create a service in administrator managed database, from the concepts that we have learned already, we know that there should be two things for sure. One, you have to specially specify what are the preferred instances. That means the service will be only hearing only on that particular server. That's what preferred instances means. Similarly, at the same time, you should also say what are the available list of instances. That means whenever the instance where the service is running, that is the preferred instance is down, that service will be migrated to or relocated to the available instances that you are going to give in the list. So let us see that how does it work, and we will understand that much better. As you see on the screen, just say srvctl add a service. I'm having this syntax on the screen. What does this syntax will do? Let me actually show that after connecting to this environment, and then we will understand it better. So let me log in. Okay. So let me give my credentials and then set the environment variables, and whenever RACDB2 is required for me, I'll be logging into RACDB2. At the moment I'm hoping that it is not required, so but still it is waiting anyway. So meantime, let me open RACDB2 as well. Alright, so Oracle and then login. And now let me set the environment variables for node number 1. So .inv and then RACDB1. Now let me actually copy this one, the command that will help us to add a new service name in the RAC setup. So as I said you already, to add a service names in RAC setup, it is always the best method, and it is also must to use only srvctl utility for that. So I'm creating a service at the moment, so let me also set up the environment variables and be ready on the node number 2 so that we can perform any other activities when required. So as you see, I have this node number 2. That's fine. So I'm adding a service at the moment. What is that service name? The syntax goes like this: srvctl add service to create or add a new service to the database environment RACDB, and this is the service name that has to be passed with the parameter -is, and then -r will tell so what are the list of preferred instances. That means you are creating a service name called service2, which should be only available on node number 2, that is RACDB2. And in case if RACDB2 fails or that server goes down by any reason, then the service has to be relocated to node number 1. That's what you are saying whenever you are adding service here. So let us wait until the service is added, and then we will be seeing how do we go with the further steps. As soon as we add the service, make sure you can just check the status of the service. For checking up the status, you will not be required the fields like -r and -a. So you can just run this command and check the status of the service. At the moment, it will not be running. That means it is not enabled. The service, when you create it freshly, it will be disabled by default. So that's the reason it is not running at the moment. And because it is not running, it will not be registered in either of your scan listeners or your local listeners. Nowhere it will be registering. So if you just check lsnrctl status listener, you will see that in the listener you will not have that service name yet, because it is node number 1, it will never have. So just check on this node number 2, because I said that the service name should here on node number 2. You don't have that service name even on node number 2, but let us verify the scan listeners as well. But before that, let me verify what are the scan listeners available on this server. But before that, let me run this ASM plus ASM2 and then LSNR PSFNEF grep TNS, and there is only one scan listener on node number 2. So just say LSNRCTL status listener underscore scan 1. So you can see, yes, yet that service name is not registered here, neither in local listeners nor in scan listeners. You can just check the same thing here as well. But now we are going to enable this. We will call that as start the service because it is not running. So you can just say start the service and then verify the status here. So let us see that starting the service, and then as soon as you start the service, what you should see on the screen, on the node number 2, you should find the service name registered in the listener, not only on the local listener, even on the scan listener. Now can you see on the screen, scan listener has also got the service name that you have started, service 2, but it is little different from the service name that you see. RACDB is the service which can allow connections to both the instances, but service 2 is the service name which will only allow the connections to RACDB2. That's how we have defined this service name, isn't it? We wanted this service only to be running on node number 2 according to the syntax, and when the node number 2 is unavailable, it has to come back and run on node number 1. But not only in the scan listener, the same thing will be available in the scan listener on all the nodes, not only on one node, because scan is the one that is the first point of contact for all the connections coming from the client server, isn't it? That's the reason the same service name will be registered in all the scan listeners, but all the scan listeners will be knowing that they have to redirect the connections only to node number 2, because that's the type of the service that we have created. So let me actually remove this typo that I have done. So let me run this scan listener 2. Even here we have the service name service 2, but it will be redirecting connection to only node number 2. And now just verify the local listener on node number 1. It will never have the service name because the service name is only specific to node number 2, isn't it? That's the reason you don't find it in local listener at all. But check here in the local listener, you will be finding it because this is very specific to this node. That is the reason you will have service 2 visible on node number 2. This is how the concepts whatever we have learned earlier about scan listener and also the local listener, they are giving us, it is giving us a very good picture at this point of time when we are creating a new services and the concepts of services in services in RAC environment. Now we have seen this and now we have checked all these things. Now what is that you can do is you can also create another service name which is visible only on node number 1, and it can go to node number 2 only when node number 1 goes unavailable. That's the same thing, anything is okay. Now you might get a question, so I'll be telling you, explaining you the questions. What are they? First, if you have multiple nodes, for example node number 1, 2, 3 and 4, and if you wanted a service name which should be available on 2 nodes, that is preferred nodes are 2 nodes, that is node number 1 and node number 2, and node number 3 and node number 4 should act like your available nodes. That means whenever node number 1 and 2 gets failed, these services should be transferred to node number 3 and 4. If you wanted this configuration, yes, definitely you can have. So what I'm trying to say is you can have multiple entries for each and every field that you are passing. For preferred nodes you can have multiple entries. For available nodes also you can have multiple entries. And in case if you do not specify -r or -a, what happens is what I'm going to show now. But let me see if that is covered here. Okay, 1 minute guys. Alright, so it is here. Let me actually show you. Fine, okay. So let me actually show you how do we create a service name without -r and without -a parameters. If we create such service, what happens is our next activity. So let us see. So add service, so hyphen D, it should be for RAC DB, and hyphen S, the service name should be service 3, and I'm not giving any hyphen R or hyphen A. So let us see what happens. That will be giving you a very good picture of why hyphen R and hyphen A very specific for the service names. If you wanted those service names to be hearing on the specific nodes according to your requirement, that's what will give you a very good picture at the moment. So let us wait for this, and then we will see the status of the service. And after that, when we start the service, what happens is the next one. So as you see here, hyphen G is the one that you should definitely provide, or hyphen R is the one that you have to definitely provide. So you cannot add a service name in the administrator managed database environment without hyphen R option and without hyphen G. Please remember, hyphen R in the sense it is your for administrator managed database environment, but hyphen G is the value that is for your policy managed database environment. Now you might get a query, in case if I wanted the service name to be available on all the nodes. I don't want a service name to be created which is specific to only node number 1, or which is specific to node number 2. In case if I wanted the service name to be created on all the nodes, then what is the syntax? You can just say hyphen R, and you can simply say RAC DB1 comma RAC DB2, and just check the syntax here. So let us wait until what the output of SRVCTL add service will tell you, so that you will gain errors. I wantedly giving you the errors so that you gain the knowledge and you remember them from the errors. That's the main intention behind getting the errors on the screen instead of giving you the correct syntax. So let us wait for this and see if it goes success or not. So as we have here SRVCTL add service, let us see it is successful. That means this is the only way that you can actually create a service. You have to give the list of all the nodes so that your service name will be running on all the nodes. It can redirect connections to all the nodes in the cluster. This is the method of creating a service name, and if it wants to be hearing on all the nodes in the environment, this is the way. So just say SRVCTL start, and then we will be performing so SRVCTL start service, and then we will be checking up whether service 3 is the service which is available on all the listeners on all the instances or not, is what we will be trying to check. So but meanwhile, just try to check here if service 3 has come here. Yes, service 3 is there for RAC DB2 here, and just check the listener status of your scan1 listener underscore scan1. Yes, you have got service 3 here, and this service 3 is redirecting connections to both the nodes. Very similarly, even on the local listener here, you will have service 3, and it will be redirecting connections to node 1, and now scan 2 and 3 will also have the same thing. No problem. This is what the concept of creating the services. And in case you can perform multiple managing activities on top of the services, what are they? You can stop the service, you can enable the service. I will be showing you on the screen. So you can stop the service, you can disable the service. Disabling the service is completely removing the service from the configuration in the OCR file directly. So you can start, you can stop temporarily, you can disable it. That means completely it will be removed from the OCR file. You can modify the service. Modify the service is nothing but if you wanted to change preferred instances, if you want to change preferred instance and available instances, if you want to change them vice versa, then you can use SRVCTL modify. So let me show you that. SRVCTL modify service hyphen S. So it is service 2, where hyphen R earlier I used RAC DB1, now RAC DB2, now I wanted to interchange them. So let me check this. So SRVCTL modify service, I have to give the command hyphen D RAC DB, and then these things. So let us check for that. Now 1 minute. Is the syntax wrong somewhere? 1 minute guys. So let me check how did we add it. Yes, this is the one. Okay, I'm sorry. The syntax for modify service is little different. It is not hyphen r and hyphen a. Let me tell you, it is hyphen I. Sorry, it is hyphen s and hyphen I. Okay, let us not get confused at this point. There is a very simple solution for your confusion and also for me. What I will be doing is I'll be just saying modify service and then hyphen h. Possibly it will give you all the possible values for this one. So here you are seeing it very clearly. It should be hyphen I and hyphen a, not hyphen r and hyphen a. That's the reason it was throwing us the error. So what I'll be doing is I'll be copying the same thing. So instead of hyphen r, I should be using hyphen I. That's the only problem we had. So if you want to modify something, the parameter value is different here, as I told you. So let me copy this until here and then I, and followed by this one. So now let us see whether this one will be changing or not. So hyphen a requires the options hyphen I and hyphen n. Okay, hyphen n. What is hyphen n here? Let us check that. Modify service configuration. Okay, hyphen n. At the end we will have to give hyphen n. So let us give this and hyphen n. So anywhere if you are struck with the syntaxes using srvctl command line tool or crschtl command line tool, you can just take the help of the same command line utility, so that you are not stuck anywhere and you are not dependent on any others. You can directly go and do it yourself when you can read the output of srvctl help, and you can do it yourself, no problem. And see here, now let us check the status of local listener here. You should get the service name to this listener now, because earlier it was on local listener of node number 2, but here I have changed the configuration. Now you can see that service 3 has come to node number 1. Sorry, service 2 has to come, but where is it? It did not come yet. So let us check the status of this srvctl status service and then hyphen d rac db hyphen s service 2. Let us check. So it is running still on node number 2, though we have changed it. So let us stop and start it and check whether it can bring it up according to the new configuration that we have got. So service hyphen d rac db hyphen s service 2. I'll be explaining the concept behind it, but I wanted to follow the process so that you gain the knowledge out of the activities that I'm performing. Just copy this and then check it out. And then let us actually copy this and be ready. Now can you see the status of this one? Now it is running on RACDB1. So you cannot directly change the preferred and available instances if you want to modify the service property. Definitely it should be started and stopped, because without which you are changing only the configuration in the OCR file. But for the current running service name, it will never know until unless you restart it. That's what I was thinking to show you guys, and it is now available. So you can just run the same local listener status. You will identify that the local listener has got the service name 2 as well, and it will not be available on node number 2 anywhere, because it is not in the preferred list at all. See, the preferred list has come back to node number 1. So these are the few administration activities that you can perform. And now with this, let us try to understand from the Windows server, how can I make use of these connections, whether by using listener scan listeners, or whether by using it can be scan listeners, or it can be your local listeners, or it can be VIP listeners. It can be anything. So let me actually create a TNS entry, and then let me start using it and show you the difference there. So I'll be going to the location where I have got my software installed. So it's C drive and then program files. Is it so? No. Is it so here? No. So let me go to my location where I did this. So it's the Oracle XE, hopefully. So Oracle admin and it's the product, and then this one it's server. I have network here, I have admin here. This is the tns names.raw file where I have got multiple entries already. I'll see if I can make use of something here. Yes, let me copy this and then paste it out. So here I'll be using something called connection to direct VIP of the first server. So VIP of the first server, what is the IP address of VIP of first server? Hopefully it is 2 and 3. So let us check it instead of being in a doubtful situation. So it is always good that you verify it here and then do this, because I'm writing a TNS entry on my client server now. So let me say cat/etc/host. It will have all the details. Please be sure that we are using VIP like this, directly IP addresses on the client server, but in reality you will always have to use DNS names, like you have to use RAC scan instead of the IP address of the scan, because DNS will be resolving this name into the IP, and at that point it will be following a round robin algorithm. That means whenever the first connection that is requested by the application will be using this IP address to connect to the listener. Second time when the request comes from the application server to connect to the same scan listener, it will be going to the second one, who will be taking care of redirecting the connections to the listeners one after the other. Because you are using the same name and multiple IP addresses, your DNS server will take care of this rerouting the connections to one after the other IP addresses using round robin algorithm. Remember this point. And now because I don't have DNS at the moment, I'm running this like this, and on the node number 1 I know that there is a service called service 3 which is available on both the nodes, but service 2 is the one which is available only on node number 1 at the moment. And similarly VIP2 will allow me the connections for node number 2 only, because it is a local listener, and for node number 2 you have service 3 as well as the local listeners IPs. Now you get the beauty of scan. So it can be any scan. I'm using only at the moment only one scan listener, but you can use any scan listener, as I said, using round robin algorithm that happens in reality. So don't worry about it. So I'm using only one scan listener at the moment. The IP address would be probably 6, whether it is on node number 1 or node number 2, and you can use any service name here. So you can write service 2 or it can be anything. So just save it and then exit. Now try to connect from this one and see where the connections are being established on the RAC environment. Let us see that. So I'm connecting it here. So just say SQL plus username and password on my server, and then I will be saying that VIP1. So when I say VIP1, the connection should always go to node number 1, because it is using the local listener on node number 1, bypassing the scan. That means now the connection request is directly reaching the listener which is running on VIP but not the scan, because I have given the IP address of VIP of node number 1. Now you can verify where is the connection that has been established. So INV, so just say RACDB1, you can say SQL plus /assistdba, SQL plus /assistdba, and in here we can say select username comma inst underscore id from gv $session, where username is equals to system. So let us check where is the connection now. It would be only to node number 1, because anytime you connect it will be always on the node number 1. Why? Because as I said, you have been using scan listener we have been using VIP listener, which will only redirect connections to node number 1. So now try to give exit and try to reconnect. There will not be any rebalancing operation as well, because that local listener doesn't have any rebalancing or load balancing feature enabled. So that's the reason it is always this. Now try to check the same thing again from the client server by trying with VIP2. When you try VIP2, what happens? The local listeners on node number 2 have been used. So these connections are always established to node number 1. Why it's so? Let me check. In VIP2, where is this service name I have created? Let me check the entry. Okay, did I close it? Okay. So what is VIP2 saying me? So VIP2 is saying me that it has to redirect the connections to service number 3. So this is the mistake that I have done. The IP address I did not change to VIP of node number 2. That's the reason it has redirected connection to only node number 1. Why? Dot 2 is the public address of my node number 1. That's the reason there was the connection only to node number 1. See how did I able to identify that problem? Now come back to this and let us verify it again. Where is the connection going if I use the correct entry of VIP2? So just establish it, and now it has to always go to node number 2. This is how I am able to identify. But now just check, we are using scan listener, but when you use the scan listener, and in the scan listener, what is the service name that you are using? We are using service 2. So service 2 is the one which will be always be on node number 1 only, isn't it? So that's the reason whether you use scan one after the other, the sessions will be always established on node number 1. But as I told you, if you just try to use service 3 here, it is available on both the nodes, isn't it? So just try to use service 3 and see the difference. First I am establishing the connection again through scan. Let me see where is it going. So it is going to node number 2. And now let me exit and try to connect with the same scan. Let me see where does it go. Again it has, now see where is it going. Let me see. So it has gone to node number 2 only. So again let me give exit and see where does your scan listener decides the connection should go, because the service name that I am using is available on both the nodes. Still it is node number 2. So I am sure that it should be on it will be taking the decision because there is no traffic on either side. So now it has decided that it has to go to node number 1. After trying to 2 to 3 times, it has performed a load balancing operation, and it has decided that now connection let me establish to node number 1. This is how your scan listener will get the capability. If the service name is hearing on multiple nodes, it will take the decision where it has to go and establish the connection, taking care of load balancing activity. That's what I'm trying to demonstrate here. If you have a question where the difference between enabling a service and starting a service, enabling is the one that you are telling the configuration that you have to now allow the service name to be used by the database instances from the OCR file. So as I said you before, as soon as you create an a service, it will be whenever you add a new service, it will be enabled by default, but it will not be started. But whenever you start the enabled service name, first point, you can only start the service name which is enabled. That's the first point. Once you start it, the service name will be registered to the listeners wherever it has to go. So when you disable the service, you cannot start it. You have to first enable the service name so that OCR file will allow the service name to be used by the database instances through the clusterware software. Only after that you can start using the service, and you can stop the service, and whatever you want you can do it with the service names there. So the difference between modify and relocate in SRVCTL is, modify is the one that is used to change the configuration details of your service that you have created, but relocate is the one that is useful if you want to manually relocate a service name which is hearing on node number 1 that was started by the clusterware. If you wanted that to temporarily run on node number 2, you can use relocate command, and that will automatically stop the service on node number 1 and then start it on node number 2 temporarily. But when you restart the clusterware again later, it will again use the same configuration file, and it will automatically first bring up the service name on node number 1 and not on node number 2 if the preferred node is node number 1. So with this, let me actually take this and minimize it. So we have these things ready anyway. So let us actually see now how can we look at let me tell you guys the next part of the activity, that is how do we use on the local server. As I said you, this is how you can use it. And now it is very, very important for us to understand what is the concept of load balancing. Actually, the services can be load balanced. That means, as I told you already, now Load balancing is basically done on the server side with the help of the listener, that is scan listener exactly, isn't it? Now you can also perform load balancing operations, and that is basically divided into two types. One is client side load balancing, that means balances the connection request across the listeners, and the server side load balancing is the one the listener directs the connection request to the best listener instance, which is having very less load based on the load balancing advisor, as I told you in the beginning. So a client side load balancing is the one that basically decides to which listener it has to redirect the connection to only when you have multiple TNS entries in your client side. What does it mean? Let me show you. For example, you have a TNS entry like this, isn't it, as you saw on the screen. At the moment I have only one list of addresses here, so that client side load balancing doesn't make any change or any difference in this particular TNS name. But earlier to 11GR2, if you hope you remember, we used to have multiple VIP addresses in the same TNS names. So at that point, if you wanted a load balancing activity automatically to be taken care by the client side, you should be going with client side load balancing activity. So you will be configuring in the TNS name itself saying load balance is equals to on, just like server is equals to dedicated and service name is equals to this one. You will also have an additional parameter called load balance is equals to on. So whenever you say load balance is equals to on the client side TNS names, and if you have multiple entries of your database server, then it will be performing a load balancing operation on the client side, and it will be basically redirecting the connections to that specific instance only every time. So this is basically applicable for your VIP setup. So if you are using 11G R1 and any other earlier versions apart from 11G R2, you will be having VIP TNS entries on your client side. At that point, you will be having this additional configuration called load balance is equals to on. But now from 11G R2, what is the benefit? You can only have one entry of your TNS names, but still here you can perform the load balancing on the server side with the help of the scan listener, which will be taking up the decision based on the load balancing advisor, that it will get the information from PMON of each and every instance, because each and every instance server parameters or server processes information is basically handled by PMON. So PMON is the one that will take care of updating load balancing advisor, and every time scan will read the load balancing advisor to understand on which instance how many servers dedicated server processes are created, and to whichever instance we have less number of dedicated server processes created, it will redirect the connection to there. That's how you can get the benefit of services and connection load balancing in the RAC environment. And the next thing is you have to worry about FAN, which is fast connection failover. This is also, we can call it as a load balancing operation, but still it is one of the failover connection mechanisms where your load balancing is the main benefit of load balancing advisor that you can get from, but fast connection failover is the one that will help the application server to directly connect to the another node whenever the node to which it is connected is failed. For example, I am the user from application, I have connected to node number 1 and I am performing some activity, and as soon as there is some crash on the node number 1, earlier if the configuration is not fan based configuration, definitely end user will get an error saying that your session has been disconnected, please re-log in. And as soon as he re-logins, he will be going and establishing the connection on another node that is taken care by your scan. But if you are having fan configured for the same issue, as soon as user 1 gets disconnected from node number 1 because of some failure, at the background software itself establishes the connection back to node number 2 without notifying the end user. That's the benefit of fan. Even in this configuration, please remember always, if he is under the part of any transaction, the transaction is cancelled and it is rolled back, some message has to be given to the end user saying that your last transaction was failed, which was in progress, please redo the transaction or something like that. But in case if he is running a select query at the background, that select query can be resumed and that can be run on the another node after connecting to it. That's the advantage of fan. Now whenever it has to perform a load balancing operation at the server side, you will have to also worry about defining what kind of services are you are creating it in the rack environment. Is it a long service name or a short service name? What does it mean? If you define a service name as long service name, that means you are telling the OCR file or load balancing advisor that whenever somebody uses this service name and connects to the database instance, he will be staying on the instance for a very long time. With this basically hint, your load balancing advisor will give appropriate advice to your scan listeners where it has to go and redirect the connection. This is all at the background at the software level. Now if you define a service parameter, if you create a service name with the type short, that means you are telling the load balancing advisor that whenever a user connects to the rack environment using this service name, he will always be disconnecting very fast. So as soon as he connects it, he has to disconnect in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. That means you are just advising the load balancing advisor about this, so that whenever the connections are in short, that means it will be monitoring them very frequently to identify if they are disconnected or not. But if it is long, it will not monitor the connections which are established by node number 1 for very long period of time, but still it will monitor, but it will not do very frequent checks. So your service names should be either short or long. That will be helpful for your load balancing advisor to help performing the load balancing operation on the server side. But still, let me show you the service names whatever we have created so far. We did not specify whether it is short or long. So how do we identify what kind of default type of service name it is created? Let me show you that instead of telling it. So wait for a while, I think it is a little slow. srvctl config. So config will tell you the configuration details, that's it. So config service -d racdb-s service 2. So let us check what are the configuration details of this particular service name. Now as you see on the screen, where is it? It is long. So connection load balancing is long, that you see on the screen. That means by default, if you don't specify the type of the connection load balancing for a service name, the software will define that as long connection load balancing type service name. This will help the load balancing advisor to decide how the action has to be taken for a service name that you are creating. Now, having understood FAN, there is another concept called TAF. So we have to understand what is TAF. It is transparent application failover. So as you have understood the purpose of your FAN, what happens in FAN, fast application failover? If you configure FAN, what happens is, please remember one more point before I go ahead. Configuring FAN or configuring TAF is on top of the services. Only you can have a service name with the TAF configuration, or you can have a service name with FAN configuration. TAF or FAN configurations are never possible without a service name. They are purely and completely dependent on the services. This is the first point you have to remember. And the next thing, so FAN is the one, what does it do? Whenever a user connected to node number 1 and if he is actively working on node number 1, if the FAN is configured for that service name, whenever that node goes down abruptly, your FAN will receive a message from your ONS, Oracle Notification Service, on the rack environment, and it will automatically try to re-establish the connection without letting the end user know to the other available node. That is the purpose of your FAN. Now compare that with TAF. TAF is transparent application failover. That means, consider the same example. You will be connected to node number 1, that's fine, and you have been performing something, that is okay. But whenever node 1 goes down, your application server will not recognize that node number 1 has gone down unless you run some select statement on that particular node. Only when you run a select statement on that particular node, it will be able to identify that that node has gone down. Then at the back end, it will go and try to establish the connection on node number 2. This is how your TAF will work in RAC. So out of these two things, your fan is the one which is very dynamic, and it can automatically identify if a node goes down, and it establishes a connection on another available node. But to configure fan, you have two things. You have to have two things in place. One, very important, your application code should support fan notifications. Whenever you configure a fan, your ONS of the Oracle RAC environment, that is Oracle Notification Service, which we have seen in the clusterware software architecture, that will notify the application client whenever a node goes down to which it is connected with. So as soon as it receives fan notification, your application server should be able to recognize that fan notification received, and based on the notification that it receives, your application code should have an automatic re-establishment of connection. So for a fan, it is not only the one that we configure on the database server, your application should also support the fan notifications. If your application doesn't support the fan notification understanding, you cannot and you can never configure fan. But TAF is not like that. You can configure a TAF irrespective of what application code is there, because your application will be only able to identify that node is gone only when it tries to establish or run something on the node. So only when it tries to run something on the node, it will automatically identify that node is gone, and then at the background it will try to establish the connection to node number 2, that is taken care by TNS of your TAF. This is what you will have to definitely remember whenever you are trying to configure TAF or fan. And fan has got definitely very big advantage, but your application should also support for fan notifications. But for TAF, it is purely controlled by the TNS names on the client server, that's it, not your application code. That's the reason you don't need to worry about TAF. You can easily configure in any environment. But TAF, the only disadvantage is it will be able to only identify the node has gone down when you are trying to run an SQL statement on the failed node. Until then, it will not be able to identify that node has gone down. And the there are three types of TAF settings. One is none, basic, and pre-connect. We are going to see by default the TAF setting will be none, as you see on the screen. Let us see. So let me show you. Yeah, the failover type TAF, there is nothing. Failover type none and none. That means whatever service name that we have created so far, it do not have TAF configured. That's what it says. Because of the challenge that we have got, that to configure a fan, you should have a compatible application also in place. Sadly, we will not be able to configure it in this course, but I'll be telling you how the fan events will be sent by the servers, database server, and how should the application program recognize that there is an event received from the database server. We are going to see the concept, but sadly we will not be able to execute it. But for the TAF, it is not like that. We are going to execute the same thing again. That's the reason I'm not going very deep into what are these three types of TAF configurations. We are going to see that anyway, whenever we come to TAF configurations. So the next topic for us to discuss is whatever we have conceptually understood so far about connection, client side load balancing and server side load balancing, and client side failover and server side failover. We are going to see that. Now, as I said, client side load balancing is the one that is purely possible when you give load balance is equals to on field or the parameter in the TNS entries on the server side. But you can clearly also see that we should at least have two server IP addresses to get the client side load balancing active. And this one we are basically not using it. Why? Because we will be because we are started using the scan listener, and scan is performing a very active and accurate load balancing on the server side. That's the reason we are not doing it. But still, what is that we will be trying to do is, because we have VIP of node number 1 and VIP of node number 2 already there, so what I'll be doing is I'll be additionally adding, see here, I have this list here. So let me actually copy this one completely and add the same thing, because there are two local listeners. So please remember that I have the two local listeners for VIP 1. So that is for scan number 1 and also scan number 2. And when I have these two entries, now if I give load balance is equals to on, let us see what happens. So what I'm doing is, for the same VIP1, I am just giving some data, and I'm saying that client side load balance is equals to on. So when I say client side load balance is equals to on, definitely one point that you have to remember is that service name, whatever we are giving here, it should be available on both the nodes. Else there is no point of load balancing at all, isn't it? That's the reason what I'm trying to do now here is, let me create a service name, use a service name called service 3, because service 3 is available on both the nodes. Please remember, I'm not using scan listeners here, I'm only using local listeners. With the help of local listeners, can I able to achieve the load balancing using the client side parameter called load balance is equals to on, is what I am trying to test at the moment. Let me check that here. So let me save it, and with the saving it, what I'll be trying to do is, I'll be using I'll be having multiple command line prompts. So let me have that. This is one. So here let me have the entry of VIP1. Yeah, it is there. Let me establish another another command line console, and this command line cmd console here will have the same SQL plus entry whatever we have here, and I'm copying it, okay, and pasting it here. I'm just making 3 consoles ready, because I have to prove that even from the client side configuration there is a load balancing, because I'm not using scan listener here. That's the reason I'm trying to prove it, that there is a client side load balancing, not on the server side with multiple sessions. So let me open another command line console and the third one. So let me run this third one and keep it ready. So paste it. Yeah, I'm ready now. So establish the connection here, establish the connection here, and establish the connection here. So with the 3 connections that we have ran now, let us see where the connections will go and establish, whether it will be only on node number 1 or node number 1 and node number 2, or etc etc. That's what we are trying to check now. So how will we check? So let us come back to our rack setup and run a simple select statement that we have ran before as well to verify this one. So I would just say SQL plus, you have to excuse me, it is little slow today. So SQL plus /sysdba is the one that we wanted to give, and with this let me check where the connections has been established, whether the balancing has been done from the client side or not is what we are trying to verify. So let me scroll up and get the SQL that we ran. Okay, come on. Yep, so it's here. So let me rerun this. And when I rerun it, everything is coming to node number 2. Why is it so? Is the service name is dedicated to only node number 2? Let me check that. We have given service 3. I hope so. Okay, so let me give, instead of this, RAC DB, so that we get the information about the load balancing. RAC DB. So just save it. And then re-establish. I think service 3 should be available on both the nodes, isn't it? So I think client side load balancing, there is some issue here. Okay, there is no problem. Let me try doing it again and verify the connections comes to node number 1 as well as node number 2. So it has to do it. In case it was little busy, it might be doing it. So let me exit here and also exit here. What I'll be doing is, only after successful establishment of session on first command line console, I'll go and run the same thing on the second node, because my systems are very slow at the moment. There is a possibility that all the connections are going to node number 1, because it is a client side load balancing, it is not always accurate. So it is done. And the third one, yes, it is done. So let me actually recheck here. Now you see there is a connection on node number 1. So definitely a client side load balancing is happening, but as I said you earlier, because of some resources it is not so accurate. That's the reason client side load balancing is a little failure. For client side load balancing, you will be required to give multiple IP addresses, and that should be the local listeners to basically verify whether it is working properly or not. So it is working properly now. So the connection side load balancing is what we have just proved. So what is that we will see next? And that's what I wanted to check here. So it's done. Now similarly, connection or failover on the client side failover is also what we can do. So client side failover is the one that you will be able to gain when you use additional parameter called failover is equals to on. What does this failover is equals to on means? If you can recollect, we have seen we have understood the concept of VIP. That means whenever node number 1 goes down, automatically it will try to go and re-establish the connection on node number 2, but it will be only doing it whenever there is a failover is equals to on. So if there is no failover is equals to on parameter here, once the connection is gone which is connected to node number 1, that connection will never try to go and re-establish on node number 2 when this node goes down. So this is all about client side failover, but again this is not very accurate, because client side failover or client side load balancing has got all its drawbacks, because it is everything which is running on the application server without any accurate knowledge on how busy is your database server with respect to resources, with respect to the availability, and with respect to everything. That's the reason it is not so successful. So for client side load balancing, what is the solution that we have got now? That is server side load balancing, which is by using scan. And similarly, for the client side failover, for the problem that we have got, what is the solution that we have at the moment? Either TAF configuration or FAN configuration. That's the beauty of it. Now for the server side load balancing, you need not do anything in the TNS entry. You can directly start using your scan listener. So your scan listener will do the job for you. So what I'll be doing is, in the same VIP1, instead of using another these things, I will be removing one of these things, and instead I'll be using, instead of local VIP, I'll be using scan listener here called 7, and I'll be removing load balancing option also here. So let me remove this, because I'm trying to test now server side load balancing. So this should not be there, just to verify its functionality. So just save it. Now again come back to 3 command line prompts that we have got. So 1, 2 and 3, and then give exit, and again try to connect with the same TNS names. So let me do that here, here and here, and start with the first one. Yes, let us see, this VIP1 should establish the connection with the scan now, and there is no load balancing on the client side at the moment. So let it connect on this one, then I'll try to go and establish on other one. Yes, this is second one. Now yes, this is third one. Now try to see whether your scan is able to perform the load balancing or not. Yes, see, it has performed. It has allowed the connections on node number 1. 2 connections are node number 1, and 1 connection is on node number 2. So this will literally prove that your scan listener will perform the load balancing operation by default. That's what we have achieved from it. Now we have understood how server side load balancing is happening. So that is very clear from it. And now, as I told you, your PMON of the background process will take care of updating the load balancing advisor, so that your listeners will know what is the load on each and every server, and it will help the load scan listener to redirect the connections to the instances where it suspects that load is very less. That's how your software is designed with. And now fast application notification, which I was just telling you guys, because failover on the client side is always not accurate, and it is always having a drawback of waiting for 10 minutes. That was the drawback in VIP, isn't it? So that's the reason we have scan in place, and for scan in place also for failover activities we have FAN in in place. The FAN is the one that I said it should be, application code should be compatible for it, and it has got the advantage of automatically re-establishing the connection at the back end as soon as your Oracle notification service will notify the client that the so and so node is gone down. So as soon as it identifies that node goes down, all the connections which were established on node number 1 will try to establish to another nodes in the cluster. That's the overview of FAN, fast application notification, and it is configured on top of the service name. And now for the FAN, as I have done this overview, this is what the picture will make you very clear. Consider you have node number 1, you have high availability events that are coming. So Oracle notification service is the one that will take the headache of publishing the events to also Oracle notification service on each and every node of the application server. So this is what, whenever you have FAN configured, you will have Oracle notification service on database server, that is there by default, and you should also have Oracle notification service on the client side as well. That's the reason the configuration is little different in the FAN. You should also have the applications which can be compatible with this. And if you observe very carefully, your .NET is the one that cannot actually compatible with the Oracle notification services, and your directly OCI APIs are also not possible. But instead, if you can use ONS based applications which is of C, they can have ONS configured. So it is definitely your application developers, if they are very closely working on Oracle softwares, they will be understanding if they wanted FAN, they will definitely develop the application so that they can have the ONS configured on the application server as well. So ONS on the database server will communicate with ONS on the application server, then ONS will take care of re-establishing the connection automatically at the backend. So it is basically supported like this. And benefits, as I told you, no need for connections to rely on connection timeouts. As I told you, for failover on the data client side, it will be always waiting for 10 minutes to go back to the next available node, so it will be avoided. And it is used by load balancing advisor to propagate load information, definitely, because it is there by default, because when there is a FAN, scan is always available. And designed for enterprise applications and management console integration. That means your FAN is also integrated with database control, that is your OEM as well, so you can actually manage it from OEM. And is reliable distributed because it detects high availability event very timely. That means for every I hope it will be for every 2 seconds or 3 seconds it will be verifying it, and it will, as soon as it verifies that, it will push us notifications directly to your applications. That's what I said. And it can be tightly integrated with JDBC applications, mostly with the connection pools. That's the architecture on the application side. And it can be integrated with DataGuard broker and also enterprise manager. That's the reason FAN has got this list of benefits. And when I have been saying that the events that are occurring on the database side will be notified to the application server, how and what are the different events are generated on the database server side, and what are those events that will be communicated with the application server is what we have to know now, because we are anyway not able to configure it. We will understand it, what are the different types of events that your FAN will support. Any event which is on the unavailability or availability of the service is definitely allowed in FAN. And for pre-connect service names using TAF and all, yes, it can allow. So that means you can have a service name of type pre-connect as well as FAN. That's what it means. And if application service on the specific instance, if you wanted to send a notification, yes, definitely you can do it. Any events on top of your database, availability or unavailability, your FAN will take care of it. And also instance, not completely database. If one of the node 1 or node 2 goes down, definitely your ONS will notify the ONS of the application server. And anything changes with respect to ASM, changes with respect to node, that is the operating system, and changes, and also service metrics. Service metrics are nothing but the information from your load balancing advisor is also will be the part of your fast application notification that is sent to the application server. And for all these, each and every event, there are different statuses, whether that is up or down, or whether it is connection up, it is actually coming up, that is called pre-connection down. Whether it is in the process of going down, that is what we call it as pre-connection down. Is it completely down, the server is completely down, or the component is completely down, or is it not able to start, or its restart has been failed. So there are different types of statuses for each and every event that your notification will give you. So basically all these things I will explain with the help of an example. An event can be unknown also. And the third field that is very very important in the FAN notification is what is the reason behind this event. Whether user wantedly brought it down or wantedly brought it up, Is that the reason for this event which has occurred, or is it because of the software failure, hardware failure, or is it because of XYZ failure, or is it because of the dependency of another object, because VIP was not running, because of that service name was up and not available? Is there any dependency for one of the events which was failing, or is that unknown reason of if the software could not able to identify the reason behind the event unavailability, then definitely it will write it as unknown. And also auto start, boot, public network down. So these are the different reasons why your events can actually occur, and how events are basically let the application server notify. So how will be the format of an event? I'm trying to show it here. This is the event type. So just as an example here, the version is this one. So what is the event type here? The event type is for the service name. So it is for the service name. So it is showing here the service name status is up. Why the service name has come up? Because user has performed this operation. At what time he has performed this operation? This is the one. And the event type is for the service. As I told you on the top, there are multiple events, right? So it can be for the service, it can be for the ASM, it can be for the node, it can be for database, it can be for the instance. So the first example I am showing you, for an event type called service, how will be the notification format? So here you see, for the service name, for the service type, this is the service name. For the database called RACDB, the current status of this event is up and running. It has been brought up by the user. And at what timestamp it has brought up also will be notified to the application server. And the second example that will help you to understand better is node event. So a node event, this is the node on which I am raising an Oracle notification service. It has gone down. And at what time it has gone down? Yes, this is the timestamp. As soon as application server receives some message with the status as down or node down or failure or some status which will tell that that particular event is gone, then automatically your sessions will be re-established to the other available nodes. This is how a FAN event will be raised on the database server, and it will be given to the database application server, so that it can identify the event in this format, and it can easily read the event, status of the event, reason for the event, and then take the appropriate action on the application server, so that it can re-establish the connection, or it should not re-establish the connection, is what the decision will be taken care by the ONS on the application servers. So I hope this particular example has given you a very good insight of how the FAN, that is fast application failover, fast application notification, will actually work in case of any failover situations that you see in reality.